I'm going to apologise in advance for the sunglasses, but as you can see, we're in Malaga today and it's just way too bright and sunny to do this without them. So again, sorry about that. But we are here to drive this. This is the revised and updated and facelifted Peugeot e-2008. You can see the little stylized E here on the front wing. And that means it's the electric version of the very popular 2008 crossover. Now, the eagle-eyed among you will note that this car has already been on sale in Ireland for quite some time, and it's proven a reasonable seller, but this is new, and it does address one of the big issues with the existing 2008, and that's its range. You see, the outgoing model boasted a range of apparently 320 kilometres on a full charge, but in real-world conditions, it would often give around about 250 and less than that if you were driving on the motorway. Well, that's all changed now because under here is a new 54 kilowatt hour battery, and up here is a new 156 horsepower electric motor, and the whole thing has been designed to be more efficient, so it gives you a potential range of up to 400 kilometres. Now, if that all sounds a bit familiar, yes, it is, because Peugeot is part of the same vast Stellantis car-making group as Jeep, and you might remember that not so long ago, we were driving the new Jeep Avenger with the same battery and the same electric motor. The two cars share the same platform. The 2008 is a little bit bigger and chunkier than the Avenger, a little bit roomier inside. But we have to look at the outside for the moment because you will note that down here, there has been some changes. We've got new lights, new grille, new claw mark LEDs in the front here, which now get their own Perspex cover. The whole front end has been changed and altered and subtly updated to give it a slightly new look. It's not radically new. You can still see that the whole car looks pretty familiar from the outgoing 2008. But what's it like to drive and what's it like inside? Let's go and take a look. So here in the front of the 2008, there's no major changes. The overall architecture is still basically the same. You get this kind of complex multi-layered layout which sort of starts here and dips in, and you get this faux carbon fiber panel across the dash here. It actually works quite nicely. It's an intriguing design. It looks good. Now, I know a lot of people don't like the small low-set steering wheel, but actually I've always kind of gotten on with it. The only problem is because the wheel sits down quite low and because the pedal box is quite small, if you've got big feet like mine, you will feel a touch cramped. Now, you do get nice digital instruments. These are now standard across all models, and you do get a new 10-inch touchscreen here in the center of the dash, and that uses an upgraded version of Peugeot's infotainment software, which is a big, big improvement on what the previous 2008 had. It's still not the best. There are physical shortcut buttons here for sort of things like the front and rear window demisting and the door locking. And there are some touch-sensitive switches here that give you shortcuts for the air conditioning controls and for the home page and so on. But it is still a little bit fiddly. It will take some time to get your head around it. It's not the kind of thing that you kind of fall into instantly. Now, there is good storage. You get good cup holders here. They're split level, so you can put a shallow cup in that one. The automatic gear selector, this car being electric, only has one gear, of course, is here, and you get a nice little carbon fiber effect wrist rest for it, which is maybe a little bit superfluous, but it does actually look quite nice. There's more storage under here, including a wireless phone charger, USB connections on either side of the dashboard, more storage here, and a reasonably sized storage box here under the front armrest. The door bins are a bit small. There is a section where you can get a fairly chunky bottle of water, but beyond that, the rest of the bin isn't massive, and the glove box, it's all right. It's not great. You're not going to write home about it too much, I'm afraid. Overall quality does seem to be very good. That's an area where Peugeot has really, really picked up its game in the last kind of 10 years. Everything in here looks and feels really well made. There is some scratchy plastic down here and down here at the lower reaches of the doors, but on the whole, I think you'd have to say it's a very well thought out cockpit. It does work. You may not love the small wheel, but like I said, again, me personally, I get on with it quite well. Let's see what it's like in the back. When we tested the Jeep Avenger recently, which again, I remind you, uses the same platform as this Peugeot e-2008, one of the things we found was that rear seat space was really quite poor. Here in the 2008, it's actually pretty decent. I've got that seat set for myself, and I've got just enough legroom to get comfortable. And my feet fit under the front seat, so that's good too. space is at least reasonable. Now, I think there is a problem with this quite high door sill here and the relatively shallow window glass. If you're putting children back here, they'll fit. That won't be a problem. But seeing out might be a bit of an issue for them. At least you can get an optional glass roof, which should add a bit of brightness to the rear of the cabin. The center rear seat is a little bit narrow, and there is a big transmission hump here in the middle, even though it's an electric car, because obviously it shares its platform with petrol and hybrid engine versions as well. So getting a third passenger in the back seat, that's not going to be the easiest job in the world. I think you will squeeze in, but it's not going to be very comfortable. You do at least get 2 USB slots here in the back, one of the old type and one of the new USB-C types, and there are nice little seat back pockets and small but reasonably useful door bins. So in terms of rear seat accommodation, in spite of being a fairly compact car on the outside, the E2008 does score quite well. I mean, it is a rear seat you can use and use practically. The boot actually is really rather good. It's not the biggest in the world, but it does get a split level floor, so you can adjust it to either have zero load lip, or you can drop the shelf down or take it out completely to give you slightly more luggage capacity. The only problem is that the charging cables come in quite a big chunky bag, and that does eat into your boot room if you want to bring your cables with you, and let's face it, most of the time you're going to want to do that. Nonetheless, on the whole, a fairly practical car by small crossover standards. So what is the E2008 like to drive? Well, I mean, it won't come as a tremendous surprise to say that it feels pretty familiar, because the changes from the previous version haven't been overly radical. That 156 horsepower electric motor does give you a bit more oomph, but you have to put it into sport mode if you're going to actually feel the full additional power and the extra bit of acceleration. If you're just driving around in normal mode, honestly, it's not going to be all that much different to the previous version. But is it genuinely longer range? I think yes, generally it does appear to be. Now, we've been driving on an incredibly hot day. It's 38 degrees Celsius out. We've had the air conditioning going full blast, and we've been driving on a mixture of twisty, steep, turning and diving mountain roads and a little bit of dual carriageway main road. And we've arrived back at base with 66% battery remaining and 238 kilometers still showing on the distance to recharge. So that's basically on an almost half battery, well, 2/3 anyway. It's giving you about as much range as the old one would give you on a full battery in real world conditions. I've no doubt that in winter that range will go down even further. There is a heat pump heating system in this car as standard, but nonetheless, when it gets very cold out, I think you can expect it to be a little bit less efficient in terms of overall range. Now, in terms of how it drives, to be honest, it's a little bit ordinary. I mean, it's fine. The small steering wheel, it does give a sort of urgent feel to the steering as you turn in initially, but you soon realize that ultimately it's quite a heavy car for its overall size, and it corners neatly, and it kind of corners reliably, you might put it. It's very sure-footed, it's very stable, it doesn't do anything particularly wrong, it doesn't do anything particularly badly, but it's just not a thrilling drive in any sense. I mean, if you've driven the old 155 horsepower 1.2-litre petrol version of the previous 2008, that was a fun car to drive. That was almost like a hot hatch. It's a bit more ordinary, to be honest. That said, it's very smooth and very refined. So as a thing to poodle around in on your commute, and even go on the odd longer journey if you're prepared to put up with with trying to find a decent fast charger when you're out and about, and it will charge at up to 100 kilowatts power from a DC charging station, so you will be able to top it up reasonably quickly, assuming you can find a fast and working DC charging point, of course. So on the overall performance, it does really quite well. The ride quality is very, very good. I think the extra weight of the battery actually helps a little bit in that respect. But it's never a car that you're going to get up early in the morning to drive just for the fun of it. Sorry, but it just isn't that. But as a practical, comfortable, usable all-rounder, actually it scores quite well. I'm not a big fan of small crossovers in general. I never have been. And this isn't one that's going to dramatically change my mind. But as a solid family car, probably more one for downsizers than people with expanding families, because even with that useful space in the back, it's not really a particularly massively spacious family car. Nonetheless, it's a decent, solid, good car. Not brilliant, but we will have to wait and see how much it costs. I know that Peugeot Ireland are struggling to try and keep the price under control. They're cognizant of more affordable rivals coming from Japan and Korea and other places. They are genuinely trying to keep the price down as low as they can, but I fear it will drift up beyond the 37, 38, maybe even 39,000 euro mark for a basic version of this, which is quite a lot of money for a small car. We'll have to wait and see. The car won't arrive in Ireland until later this year, and prices won't be settled for another couple of months yet. So, on the whole, decent, but it's not going to excite you. It's not going to thrill you. It is a good all-round electric machine, though.